Welcome to Whisper at 3 a.m., where stories are only meant to be heard after midnight. Here, we share chilling experiences, untold secrets, and whispers that only come when the clock strikes 3. If you enjoy horror stories in the style of Reddit No Sleep, don't forget to like, subscribe, share to spread the fear, and comment if you're brave enough to share a story of your own. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to step into the dark. That was the note taped to the inside of the kitchen cabinet when I moved into the sublet. It wasn't part of the lease, just a handwritten slip of paper, yellowed and curled at the edges in loopy handwriting. The kind of note a grandmother might leave to remind you where the sugar is, but it wasn't signed, and it didn't say anything else. I laughed when I saw it. Creepy. Sure. But it fit the apartment. The place was old, with warped floors and vintage tile. A big window overlooked the alley behind the building, a narrow stretch of concrete and shadows between two brick walls. My bedroom window faced it directly. I moved in the first week of November, during one of those early cold snaps that makes the whole city smell like metal and dead leaves. I wasn't expecting much. Temporary housing while my grad program started in January. 3 months, that's all. The first night I stayed up late unpacking. Around midnight I noticed the window curtain shifting. I had cracked the glass earlier to let out the dust, but I was sure I'd closed it. Yet the curtain swayed, slow and deliberate, like fingers brushing fabric. I walked over, tugged it shut, and latched the window. Nothing weird, but I remembered the note. 3:13 a.m. At 2:50, I was still awake. Insomnia, probably. My body hadn't adjusted yet. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, and stared at the drawn curtain. I didn't expect anything. At 3:12 a.m., I stood. At 3:13 a.m., something tapped the window. Once, twice, pause, then again, tap, tap, like fingernails. I froze. It could have been a branch, a bird. The building across the alley was just far enough that you couldn't reach across, but maybe someone had a long stick? A prank? I didn't look. I walked to the curtain and pulled it shut tighter, even though it was already closed. The tapping stopped. I went back to bed. The next morning, the note was gone. I searched the cabinet. Nothing. I tried to shake it off, but that night, I set an alarm for 3:10 a.m. and waited. At 3:13, the tapping returned. This time, followed by a sound like whispering. Not words, more like breath struggling through teeth. I didn't open the curtain. I started following the rule. Every night, I made sure the curtain was shut tight before 3:13 a.m. Sometimes I'd forget until the last minute, but I'd never let the time pass uncovered. And always, there was a sound, a tap, a scratch, a whisper. Once, even a soft humming that matched a lullaby I vaguely remembered from childhood. I didn't know what was outside. I just knew it wanted me to open the curtain. One night, I broke the rule. Not on purpose. I fell asleep with the curtain halfway drawn. I'd been up working on a paper for hours and collapsed before checking the clock. At 3:13 a.m., something pulled me awake. Not a sound, not a movement, just presence. I opened my eyes and looked at the window. A shape stood on the other side, tall, thin, pressed close to the glass. It didn't move. It didn't knock. It just waited. I shut my eyes, counted to 10. When I looked again, it was gone. I closed the curtain. That morning, I noticed handprints on the outside of the window. 5 long fingers, barely visible. Smudged like grease. I decided to leave. I called the landlord, said I'd had a change of plans. They didn't sound surprised. 3 months is long enough, the voice said. No refunds on the deposit. I packed fast, but I kept wondering, what happens if you break the rule? If you open the curtain, look too long? I didn't want to find out. 2 nights before I left, I woke up early. 3:05 a.m. The air felt wrong. I sat up and turned toward the window. The curtain moved, slowly, pulling open, by itself. A pale hand was sliding across the fabric from the inside. I screamed and jumped back. It vanished. I slammed the curtain shut. The whispering that followed was louder this time, urgent, pleading, and unmistakably, my name. I stayed awake until sunrise. The next day, I found a second note in the cabinet, different handwriting, block letters. Do not answer, do not engage, do not look. It was taped over the space where the first note had been. I left that day. Paid for a hotel until I could move into campus housing. But even now, months later, I check my curtains every night. I set an alarm, 3:10 a.m., just in case. And I don't look, because sometimes I still hear the tapping. I moved back to my childhood home after the divorce. The city felt too loud, too close, and the old farmhouse, quiet, creaky, and buried at the edge of town, seemed like the right kind of nowhere. My parents had left it to me after they passed, and until now, I hadn't had the stomach to go back. It smelled the same, like dust and lemon polish. Faint memories clung to the corners of the place, like cobwebs you don't see until the light hits just right. I walked through each room slowly, half expecting to see my younger self dart past, barefoot and wild-haired. I started cleaning. Boxes, old clothes, junk drawers. The basement was the worst of it. Dim, cluttered, and filled with decades of just-in-case clutter. That's where I found the tin box. It was tucked beneath a shelf behind a broken rocking horse wrapped in a stained dish towel. It wasn't much to look at, plain metal, rusted around the edges, no label. Curious, I opened it. Inside were plastic bags, 5 or 6, sealed, neatly labeled in looping old-fashioned cursive. Age 6, hair. Age 9, nails. Age 12, hair. My breath caught. It was my name on every tag, my handwriting on some, but I didn't remember writing them. And the contents, they were mine. I recognized the strawberry blonde strands in the age 6 bag. That was the year I cut my own hair after watching my mom do hers. She had cried. The nails were worse, cleanly clipped, arranged like they'd been studied. I nearly dropped the box. I brought it upstairs and set it on the kitchen table, staring at it as if it might explain itself. Why would someone keep these? Why would I? I called my sister. Hey, I said, do you remember Mom keeping, like, hair or nails? You found the box. My skin went cold. You knew? I saw it once, when I was little. I wasn't supposed to. Dad got mad. What is it? She hesitated. Mom said it was for protection, said it kept us together, safe. I didn't understand. Like some kind of spell? She never said that word, but she believed in things. That night I dreamed of a box, larger, wooden, buried. Inside, more of me. Teeth. Blood, a voice whispered, to keep you whole. I woke to the tin box open. I had shut it. Inside, one of the bags was missing. Age 9, nails. I searched the house. Nothing. I locked the box in a cabinet. The next day, I felt strange, unsettled, disoriented. I walked into the bathroom and, for a second, didn't recognize my own reflection. It passed, but it kept happening. I'd forget where I put things, feel dizzy in familiar rooms. Once, I looked at an old photograph of me and couldn't remember being there, like the memory had gone soft around the edges. Then I heard scratching in the walls, soft, rhythmic, not mice. I called a contractor to check. Your wiring's fine, he said, but there's something odd. He pointed to a small hole behind the water heater. Inside was another bag, labeled age 15, hair. I hadn't seen it before. I took it out. The tin box was open again. The age 12 hair bag was gone. I didn't sleep that night. The scratching grew louder. Voices echoed down the hallway. Whispers. They always said the same thing. Come back. I began losing time. 10 minutes here, half an hour there. Once, I found myself standing in the backyard barefoot, mud on my hands. I had no memory of walking outside. I checked the tin box. Empty. Every bag gone. But I hadn't moved them. I tore the house apart. The basement. The attic. In the crawl space, I found a small wooden effigy. A figure, roughly human-shaped, stuffed with hair, nails, threads of fabric that looked like pajamas I wore as a child. Tied to it was a note, for binding, to keep her safe, to hold her whole. It was in my mother's handwriting. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. I left the figure where it was, backed away. That night, I locked every door, sat in the kitchen with the tin box. I whispered into the still air, "What are you doing to me?" The lights flickered. The air grew thick. And then across the table she appeared, my mother. Not ghostly, not monstrous, just her. Wearing her gardening dress, hands folded, she looked at the tin box, then at me. "I had to," she said. "You were breaking." "What does that mean? You were coming apart, even as a child. Pieces slipping away. I saved what I could." I couldn't speak. "You don't remember, that's the price, but I kept you whole. Here." She reached toward the box. Inside, a new bag had appeared. Age 33, nail. That was now. I looked down. A small crescent of nail was missing from my left thumb. I never clipped it. She stood. "You can let go," she said, "or you can keep what I saved." "Let go of what?" She smiled sadly. "Everything, the memory, the weight, the grief." She vanished. The house fell silent. I buried the tin box the next morning, deep in the garden where she used to grow lavender. I planted over it. The house felt lighter. The voices stopped. I began remembering again. Real memories. My childhood. The scent of her apron, the way she used to hum while cooking. I sleep well now. Sometimes I dream of the box, but it never opens, and I always wake up whole. I inherited the house from my grandfather, though I wasn't exactly eager for it. A quiet, 2-story cottage on the edge of a fading rural town, surrounded by overgrown weeds and pine trees that scraped the roof in a storm. My grandfather had lived alone for years before he passed, and while we were never particularly close, I felt obligated to keep the place from crumbling. I arrived in early spring, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and mold. The house was intact but tired, peeling paint, loose shingles, windows that groaned when you opened them. Still, it had good bones, as they say. The first thing I noticed was the rocking chair. It sat on the front porch, just to the right of the door. An old thing, wooden with a faded green cushion and worn armrests. The kind of chair that might have once comforted a man in his twilight years, watching the wind shuffle through the trees, only now it didn't sit still. It rocked, constantly, slowly, back and forth. When I first saw it, I assumed the wind was to blame. After all, the porch was open, and it was a breezy afternoon. I stepped onto the wood planks, the boards creaking underfoot, and walked over to the chair. The moment I touched it, it stopped, just like that. I gave it a push. It rocked as expected. Then I let go. It stilled. Strange, I thought. That evening, I sat inside, unpacking boxes in the living room. The house was quiet, except for the occasional groan of wood adjusting to temperature changes. Around midnight, I stepped out to smoke a cigarette. I hadn't in months, but something about the silence made me crave distraction. The chair was rocking again, back and forth, back and forth. There was no wind, not a breeze. I froze. I waited, watching it. The rhythm was gentle, slow, deliberate. I stepped closer. It kept rocking. I leaned in, placed my hand on the top rail. It stopped. I inspected it. No obvious mechanism, no motor, no prank. Just wood, age, and movement. I told myself it was my imagination. The next night, I watched it from the living room window. It rocked, steady. By the third night, I set up my phone to record it. I placed it on a tripod, angled just right, and hit record at 11 p.m. I went to bed. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At first, nothing unusual. The chair moved subtly. Then around 2:36 a.m., the feed glitched. Just a flicker. Then a shape appeared. A figure. Faint, transparent, sitting in the chair. I paused the video, rewound, watched again. The figure wasn't solid, more like a distortion, like heat waves on pavement. It stayed in the chair for 10 minutes, then vanished. I didn't sleep well that night. Still, I didn't feel afraid. More curious than anything. I began researching the house. My grandfather had bought it in the 1970s. No record of previous owners having issues. No crimes. No lore. I asked the neighbor, an old man named Harris, who'd lived down the lane for 50 years. "Oh, that chair?" he said, sipping his coffee. "Your grandfather used to say it rocked by itself, even when he wasn't sitting in it. Said it kept him company." "Did he ever say why?" Harris shrugged. "Old people get lonely." But my grandfather hadn't always lived alone. His wife, my grandmother, had died young. A car accident. I barely remembered her. Her name was Margaret. And from what little I knew, she used to sit in that very chair every evening after supper, knitting or sipping tea. I found a photo in the attic a few days later. Faded, but clear enough. My grandmother smiling, sitting in the rocking chair, a red scarf in her lap. That night, I placed the photo on the small table next to the chair. The rocking stopped. I watched it for an hour. It didn't move once. The next morning, the chair had shifted a few inches, and the photo had turned, now facing the door. It kept happening. Subtle shifts, like someone was still using the chair, still keeping watch. One night, I sat in it myself. It rocked gently under my weight. I closed my eyes, listening to the night sounds. And then, I swear I heard humming. Soft, familiar. A lullaby. I bolted upright, but the sound stopped. I stood, walked inside, but I wasn't alone. The scent of lavender hung in the hallway, my grandmother's favorite perfume. Over the following weeks, the house felt different, lighter. The air smelled cleaner, the pipes clanged less, the windows stopped groaning. The rocking chair never moved violently. It never slammed, never tipped. It just rocked, as if someone still needed to sit, still needed to wait. Then came the storm. A brutal summer squall. Wind tore through the trees, rain pounded the roof. I ran outside to secure the shutters. The chair was rocking hard, faster than ever. I reached for it. It stopped. Lightning struck a nearby pine. The ground shook, but I stood firm, hand on the chair, and then I saw her, in the flash of lightning, standing in the doorway. My grandmother. Clear as day, she smiled, and then she was gone. The storm passed. The house stood. The next morning, I found something on the table beside the chair, a red scarf, unraveled, hand-knitted, not old, not dusty, new, warm. I picked it up, held it to my face. It smelled like lavender. The chair no longer rocks on its own, not since that night, but I still sit in it every evening, and sometimes just before the sun sets, I swear, I feel her hand brush my shoulder, and I smile, because I know she stayed, just long enough to say goodbye. When I moved into the old carriage house behind my aunt's Victorian estate, I wasn't expecting to find much of anything inside. It had been vacant for years, used mostly as a storage space, and my aunt offered it as a cheap rental while I worked on my thesis. I accepted without hesitation. Quiet, isolation, and free Wi-Fi sounded like a dream. It was sparsely furnished, a bed, a desk, an old dresser, but the mirror, that was new, oval-shaped, mounted above the sink, about the size of a dinner plate, brass-rimmed, delicately tarnished with age. My aunt said it had been in the attic and she'd put it up for character. It did add charm, but something about it always drew my eye. The center was fogged, not entirely, just a round circle about the size of a human face, as if someone had leaned in and breathed on it, permanently. No amount of scrubbing cleared it. I tried Windex, vinegar, toothpaste, even a magic eraser. Nothing helped. I gave up, used it as is. But the fogged patch, it always seemed to shift slightly when I wasn't looking. On my third night, I brushed my teeth, glanced up, and stopped mid-rinse. A shadow moved behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just my reflection and the fogged spot. Darker now. Centered. Denser. I leaned closer, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something move within the fog, like a silhouette pressing against the other side of the glass. I told myself it was pareidolia. My tired brain seeing faces in clouds, shadows in noise. But the next morning, the fog was gone, replaced by a new shape. A handprint. Faint. Smudged, but unmistakable. 5 long fingers pressed from the inside. I wiped it away, heart thudding. It reappeared that evening, this time with condensation around it, like someone had breathed on the inside again. I stared at it, refusing to blink. It didn't move, but the rest of the mirror was crystal clear. Only the center remained obscured. I ran tests, turned off all heat, checked for drafts, hung temperature sensors. I even filmed it overnight. Nothing, no steam, no moisture, except in that one perfect circle. I asked my aunt about it. She looked confused. That old mirror? It's probably haunted, she laughed. Came with the house. I've always thought it was creepy. I asked if anything had ever happened around it. She paused. Well, my sister used to say she'd see someone in it, our mother, after she died, but I never did. Did your sister live in the carriage house? She looked away. For a time. That night, I dreamed of the mirror. It was enormous, floor to ceiling. The fogged area pulsed like it was breathing, and something, stood behind it, watching. When I woke, the room was cold. Frost lined the window, and on the mirror, words. Do you see me now? Written in perfect thin streaks. I stared, breathless, wiped them away. An hour later, they returned. I posted a photo online. Paranormal forums. No clear answers. A few people said to cleanse it, burn sage, use salt, play white noise. I tried them all. Nothing changed. In fact, the mirror began fogging more frequently. The handprints multiplied, shapes pressed outward, faces, palms, a shoulder, always faint, never full. One night, after brushing my teeth, I muttered aloud, "What do you want?" The fog pulsed, then a whisper, so soft I almost missed it. To be seen. I dropped the toothbrush. Who are you? Silence. Then slowly a new set of words formed. Look behind. I turned. Nothing. But when I checked the back of the mirror, I found a hidden latch. Inside, a note, yellowed, handwritten. This mirror is a window. It only shows what was once forgotten. Underneath, a name. Sarah Holloway, 1924. I looked her up. She lived in this town, died young, declared missing at 23. Her last known address? This property. I dug into archives, found a single photo, blurry, sepia toned. She had sad eyes, hair pinned up, a pendant around her neck. I compared it to the face I sometimes thought I saw in the fog. It matched. I started talking to her. Each night, I'd stand in front of the mirror, ask questions. She rarely responded, but sometimes I'd wake to new messages. It's cold. I waited. He locked me in. My skin crawled. Was she murdered? Buried? Trapped? One message haunted me. "Still here," I asked. "How do I help you?" It took a week, but eventually one word appeared. Remember. I started writing about her, journaling, compiling her life, old records, photos, her voice as best I could interpret it. I posted a blog, a local article titled "The Girl in the Mirror, Remembering Sarah Holloway." It gained traction, shared across town, comments flooded in. People remembered, old neighbors, cousins, a former teacher. Her name wasn't forgotten anymore. The mirror fogged less. Then one night, it was clear. No fog, just my face. I whispered, "Sarah," no reply. For the first time, I felt alone. Then I noticed something new. The pendant. It sat on my dresser. I never placed it there. Inside it, a lock of hair, faded, and a note. "Thank you. Thank you." I wept. The mirror remained, just a mirror now. But I keep the pendant, and every year on her birthday, I light a candle beside it. Because everyone deserves to be remembered. Even those trapped behind the glass. I moved into my new apartment in the dead of winter. A top-floor unit in an aging Victorian home that had been chopped into rentals. The place creaked with every step, but the rent was cheap, and the view of the snow-covered park made up for the quirks. I didn't own much furniture. Most of my things fit in a couple of boxes and a mattress I dragged up the stairs. I bought a few essentials off Facebook Marketplace, some kitchenware, a lamp, and a wardrobe. The wardrobe caught my eye immediately. Solid oak, antique design with twin doors and ornate handles. The seller was a kind elderly woman who lived just outside of town. She said it had belonged to her husband's family for generations. She was hesitant to part with it, but said it belonged with someone who needed space. It was beautiful, heavy, solid, and filled with the kind of craftsmanship you can't find anymore. I loaded it into a borrowed truck and set it up in my bedroom against the far wall near the window. That night, as I lay in bed, the house settled around me, groaning pipes, the hum of wind outside. I was almost asleep when I heard it. Knock, knock. It was faint, but deliberate, like knuckles on wood. I sat up. It came again. Knock, knock. From inside the wardrobe. I froze. I told myself it was the pipes. Old house. Drafts. Maybe wood shifting from the cold. Still, I got up and opened the wardrobe. It was empty. Just my jackets, shirts, and a shoebox on the floor. I closed the doors, went back to bed. Knock, knock. It didn't happen every night, just some. Always around 3 a.m., and always the same. 2 knocks. Slow, intentional. The strange part was, I started getting used to it, like the way you get used to the sound of trains in a new city. An odd comfort, the routine of it, until the knocking changed. One night I heard it again. Knock, knock. But then, scratching. Long, slow scrapes, like fingernails across the inside of the door. I opened the wardrobe. Nothing. The air inside was colder than the room. I started recording audio at night, just on my phone. The first few nights caught nothing unusual. Then a week later, I played a recording and heard it. Knock, knock. Then a whisper. So soft, I had to boost the volume all the way up. It said my name. Liam. I dropped the phone. I didn't sleep that night. I stopped recording. Instead, I began inspecting the wardrobe. Every inch. Looking for false backs, hidden compartments. I found none. Just old wood, the faint scent of cedar, dust in the corners. The next night, I left the doors open. Nothing happened. No knocking. No voice. But when I woke, the doors were shut, latched. That's when I started locking it. I found an old padlock, looped it through the handles, and sealed it shut. That night, knock. Knock. Louder. Faster. Knock, 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 knock. I sprang out of bed, unlocked it, and flung the doors open. Silence. Still, I left it open from then on, and the knocking stopped, for a while. Then came the dreams. I was in a forest, alone, cold. Snow fell heavily around me, muffling sound. I wandered between trees, searching for something I couldn't name. Every dream ended the same way. I found the wardrobe. Standing there, alone in the woods. Its doors began to open, and I always woke before seeing what was inside. I started researching the piece, tried contacting the seller again, but the listing was gone. No phone number, no last name. I drove back to the house where I picked it up, but it was boarded up. Empty. Neighbors said the woman had passed away 3 years ago. That made no sense. I pulled the wardrobe away from the wall, inspecting the back. There was something etched into the wood. Faint, like it had been scratched in with a nail. A word, stay. Beneath it, initials MH. I didn't know what to think. I asked a local antique dealer about the piece. He examined it carefully. "This is a mourning wardrobe," he said. "What's that?" They were common in the 1800s, used to store clothes of the deceased. Some were sealed for years. The idea was containment, respect, but also distance. Distance from what? He hesitated. Grief, or what grief brings. That night I dreamed again. Same forest, but this time someone else was there. A boy, no older than 10, pale, shivering. He stood beside the wardrobe. "Are you the one knocking?" I asked. He nodded. "What do you want?" "To come out." "Why?" "I'm cold." I woke crying. The air in the room was freezing. I started talking to the wardrobe, not in madness, in hope. "I heard you," I'd whisper. "I know you're there." No response. But I left the doors open each night. No knocks. Until one night, a week later, I heard crying, soft, childlike. I got up, walked to the wardrobe. Inside was the boy from my dreams, huddled, trembling. I stepped back, heart pounding. He looked up. "Don't be scared," he said. "What are you?" "I don't remember." He crawled out, stood in the room, looking around. Then he looked at me. "You opened it." I nodded. "Thank you." He faded, not like a ghost, more like a memory, softly. I found a photograph tucked behind the wardrobe's baseboard the next day. Black and white, faded. A woman holding a child. On the back, MH and Daniel, 1911. I buried it in the park, beneath a tree. I whispered their names. I've never heard knocking since, but I keep the wardrobe. And every so often when snow falls just right, I hear faint laughter from the hallway, and I sleep peacefully, because I know he's no longer cold. I wasn't looking for anything that day, just browsing. That's what I told myself, at least. The record store was tucked away in an alley off Main Street, barely visible unless you knew where to look. No signs, just a faded door and the musty scent of forgotten music seeping through the cracks. Inside, it was quiet. Rows of vinyl in wooden crates, the kind that creak when you flip through them. Dim lighting. A fan oscillating slowly in the corner. I was the only customer. The man behind the counter looked up but didn't speak. Just nodded. He had long gray hair and a face like wrinkled paper. He looked like he belonged here, part of the furniture. I moved to the back corner where the old records were. Real antiques. Warped sleeves, faded ink, unfamiliar labels. One in particular caught my eye. No cover art, just a plain black sleeve. Inside, a thick vinyl record, heavy in my hands. The label was handwritten in faded ink. For Daniel, my name. I blinked, looked again. The writing was old, uneven, as if the ink had bled over time. I brought it to the counter. "Where'd this come from?" I asked. He barely glanced at it. "You sure you want that one?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Some records find people, not the other way around." I waited for a laugh, a wink. None came. "How much?" He named a price. Too low. I paid in cash and left quickly, the record tucked under my arm like a secret. Back in my apartment, I dusted off my turntable. I hadn't used it in years. Music had moved on, playlists, streaming, algorithms, but something about vinyl always felt alive. I placed the needle, the record crackled. Then silence. I waited. Soft piano began to play, old, melancholic. A minor key progression that felt like nostalgia wrapped in static. Then a voice. Low, female, familiar. Daniel. I froze. Not in the lyrics, not part of a song. Just a name. My name, spoken. I lifted the needle. Silence. I ran it again. Same piano, same voice. Daniel. No last name, no message. Just the name. I replayed it 3 more times. Same spot, same tone. My hands shook. I recorded the audio, uploaded it to a forum for music nerds, asked if anyone knew the origin. No responses. That night, I dreamed of a woman humming, a tune I'd never heard, but when I woke, I remembered every note. I hummed it to myself in the shower. Caught myself tapping it on the counter. It lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. I played the record again. It didn't stop at my name this time. The voice continued. "Daniel, I've waited." The piano grew louder, distorted. I yanked the needle off. The record was warm. That night, the humming returned, clearer, closer. I dreamed of a room I'd never seen, walls lined with records. A woman sat in the corner facing away, humming, waiting. When I woke, the record was spinning. I hadn't touched it. The turntable was off when I went to bed. I checked the outlet, still plugged in, no power surge. I played the record one more time. This time, the voice whispered, "Come find me." The music faded into static. I stopped listening, put the record away. Days passed. The humming lingered in my ears. My thoughts, like tinnitus, but melodic. My coworkers noticed. "You okay?" they asked. "Just tired." I lied. I returned to the record store. It was gone, not closed, gone. The alley was bricked over, no door, no sign it had ever been there. I checked online, no listings, no history. I asked around, no one had heard of it. I played the record again. The voice was louder. "Daniel, please." She sounded desperate. I became obsessed, scouring forums, posting clips, digging into antique audio archives. Finally, a lead. A man in Ohio messaged me, said he'd heard something similar once, an audio artifact on a lost broadcast from 1962. A woman's voice layered into a live performance. He sent the clip. It was her. Same voice, same tune. Daniel, but this was decades before I was born. I asked for the source. He told me the performance was from a live radio show. The artist, a woman named Evelyn Crane, a jazz singer, died young. Fire in her apartment, unsolved. I found photos. One stood out, her at a piano. In the background, a record, my record, handwritten, for Daniel. My blood went cold. I looked up the address of the studio. It had burned down, but the building still stood, abandoned. 2 states away. I went. I needed answers. The studio was in a crumbling part of town, boarded windows, graffiti, nature reclaiming brick. I broke in. The main room was charred, equipment gutted, but one room remained intact. The vocal booth, dust-covered, quiet. I stepped inside. The air changed, thick, heavy. The silence had texture, and then I heard it. The humming, no source, just present. The tune from the dream, from the record. I followed it to the wall, to a shelf. And there, beneath dust and cobwebs, sat a journal. I opened it. I hope her handwriting. The last entry read, "If he ever hears this, tell him I didn't forget. Tell him I kept my promise. Music is memory. Find me in the song." I sat down, pulled out my phone, played the record one last time. The voice returned. "Daniel, I remember. You promised." The room shimmered, heat wave, light bending. And then she stood there. Not a ghost, not quite, but real enough. She smiled. "You found me." I couldn't speak. She stepped forward, took my hand, and for a moment, just a breath, we existed together. Music, memory, time folding in on itself, and then she was gone. The room emptied, the record stopped. Back home, I played it again. The voice was gone, just the piano. Soft, warm, peaceful, no more humming, no more whispers, just music. Sometimes I dream of her still, but she's smiling now, and in those dreams I play the piano. And she sings, and I remember. I've always had a thing for antique stores. There's something about walking through rows of forgotten objects, each with a story, a past, a whisper, that makes me feel connected to something larger than myself. So when I stumbled across a dusty little shop tucked between a closed-down cafe and a laundromat on my way home from work, I didn't think twice before stepping inside. The bell above the door jingled weakly. The place smelled like mothballs and wood polish. Everything inside was muted, softened by layers of age and dust. I was about to leave when something on a back shelf caught my eye, a picture frame. It was old, maybe Victorian, carved with intricate floral patterns and little cherubs at the corners. But it was the glass that drew me in, not because it was beautiful, but because it wasn't glass. It was a mirror, a thin, silvery surface where a photograph should be. I picked it up. Odd, I thought. A frame meant to hold a memory, but instead it reflected. The man behind the counter, a thin, elderly fellow with watery eyes, watched me. "Interesting piece," he said. "People pick it up, but they always put it back." I ran my finger along the edge. The wood was cold. "How much?" I asked. He named a price. It was cheap. I bought it. When I got home, I set it on my hallway table, right beneath the wall mirror. It looked elegant, old world. A bit out of place in my modern apartment, but charming nonetheless. That night, I noticed something strange. As I passed by, I glanced at the hallway mirror, and for a split second, only a flicker, I thought I saw someone else, someone standing behind me. I turned. No one. I looked again. Just me, tired, pale. I laughed it off. Shadows, lighting, a long day at work, but the next night it happened again, this time longer. In the corner of the picture frame, the mirrored one, I saw a figure, not behind me. Inside the frame, he stood there, still, wearing dark clothes, face pale, indistinct, not a reflection, just there. I blinked. Gone. I picked up the frame, turned it around. Nothing odd, but the chill lingered. From that night on, I started watching it, just a glance every time I walked by, and almost every time the figure returned, always standing, always staring, sometimes closer. He never moved, but his presence felt wrong. I tried covering the frame with cloth. The whispers started, soft, almost inaudible, like breath through teeth, just on the edge of hearing. I uncovered it. The whispering stopped. The figure was closer. I decided to photograph the frame. The image showed nothing unusual. Then I recorded a video. Let it run for an hour. Nothing happened until minute 43. The figure appeared. Just for a second, then gone. I rewound it, played it again. There. Not a glitch, not a shadow. A man. I showed it to a friend. She told me to burn the frame. I couldn't. Something about it compelled me. Not obsession, not quite, but something close. That night, I dreamed of him. He stood in a vast, empty room of mirrors, endless reflections, and he pointed to me. When I woke, the frame had moved, just slightly, tilted toward my bedroom. I put it back. The next day, I went to the antique store. It was gone. Not just closed, vanished. The space between the cafe and laundromat was bricked up, like it had never existed. I asked around. No one remembered it. Back home, the frame waited. The man was clearer now, his face still blurred, but the outline sharper. His hand pressed against the inside of the glass. That night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I didn't get up. The next day, the frame showed not just him, but me. Standing beside him, I panicked, hid the frame in a drawer. My dreams grew worse. I stood in the mirrored room, alone, my reflection watching me. Then slowly, he stepped from one of the mirrors. "I need your place," he said. Voice like broken ice, I screamed. Woke up sweating. The drawer was open, the frame on the table. I had had enough. I took it outside, down to the dumpster. I threw it in, buried it under trash. Then I went home. It was on my table in the morning, clean, polished, waiting. I tried breaking it. Hammer, fire, salt, nothing worked. The glass wouldn't shatter. Then I saw the note, tucked behind the back panel, a faded piece of parchment, handwritten. "To whoever finds this, he lives inside. He shows himself through the lonely. Don't give him your name. Don't speak to him. Don't look too long." I'd already failed all three. I didn't know what to do. The figure was clearer than ever now. His face mirrored mine. Not just similar, identical. He was me, or becoming me. I stayed up that night, watching. At 3:13 a.m., the glass rippled. He stepped forward from inside the frame, but stopped. He stared at me. I stared back, and then instinctively, I spoke. "Why me?" He tilted his head. "You saw me. You listened." "What do you want?" He didn't answer. Instead, he raised a hand, reached toward the frame, and touched it. My chest burned, like ice. I collapsed. When I woke, the frame was empty. No reflection, none at all. I was gone. I ran to the bathroom mirror. I was there, but pale, washed out, faded, and he had taken something. Not all, but a part. I understood then. He needed identity, a presence, a voice. I'd given it. But I also had a choice. The note said not to name him. I hadn't, not truly. So I did something I never thought I would. I forgave him. I wrote a name, any name, folded it, placed it in the back of the frame, and said goodbye. The whispers stopped. The footsteps ceased. The reflection returned. Mine alone. I moved the frame to the attic, covered it in cloth. But I kept it, because sometimes, just sometimes, we all need to be seen, even if only by ourselves. And now I sleep, peacefully, whole, watched only by my own reflection. When my mother died, all I wanted was something of hers to hold on to. Just one piece of her. Something that still carried her scent, her warmth. Something that proved she'd existed beyond the hospital bed, beyond the final breath. I didn't get much. A few family photos, a box of her costume jewelry, and a blanket. It was handmade, thick and soft, knit in the pattern she'd always favored. Cream with pale blue diamonds stitched along the edges. She'd wrapped me in it when I was sick as a child, draped it across her lap while watching TV, folded it neatly on the foot of her bed when guests visited. It smelled like lavender and fabric softener. When I moved back into my childhood home to settle her estate, I brought the blanket with me. I laid it across my bed the first night. It helped me sleep. That small thread of familiarity in a house too quiet, too full of ghosts. The whispering started on the third night. At first I thought it was the wind, a faint murmur, like words carried on a breeze, soft and unintelligible. I live in a rural area where wind through the trees is constant. I told myself it was nothing. The next night, it happened again, but clearer. "Sweetheart," I bolted upright in bed. The room was dark, still, the windows shut. My phone showed 3:07 a.m. I waited, heart pounding. Nothing. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe a dream, maybe a memory bleeding through. But the next night, I heard it again. "Don't forget your slippers." Her voice, gentle, warm, laced with concern, just like when I was a child. I turned on every light in the room. I checked the windows, the hallway, the closet. Nothing. The blanket lay undisturbed, smooth, still smelling of lavender. That night, I didn't sleep. The next day, I visited her grave. I brought fresh flowers and sat with her, told her about the whispers, about the blanket. I felt foolish talking to the air, to the stone. But it calmed me, gave me the illusion of control. That night, her voice returned. "Don't stay up so late, Anna. It's not good for your skin." I nearly cried. It sounded so real, so present, but I couldn't explain it, couldn't understand how a dead woman's voice could echo from a piece of fabric. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Instead, I tested it. I moved the blanket to the couch. The voice followed. I placed it in the closet. Still, every night around 3 a.m. I heard her. Soft, loving whispers, reminders, memories. One night, I asked aloud, "Is it really you?" There was silence, then almost inaudibly, "Always." I wept. I began recording audio every night. Most of it was silence, but on a few, if I turned the volume high enough, I could hear the faintest trace of her voice. It was always soothing, reassuring, never threatening till last Friday. The tone changed. It began with static, then a hiss, then her voice, but not loving, urgent, afraid. "Don't go in the basement." I sat up in bed, confused. I hadn't been in the basement since I moved back. The fuse box was down there, but I hadn't needed it. The stairs creaked too much, and I'd always hated the smell, damp wood and mildew, but I hadn't planned to go down. Still, that night, I dreamt of the basement door creaking open, of something waiting at the bottom of the stairs. The next morning, I checked it. The door was closed, the lock rusted but intact. Still, I couldn't shake the warning. Over the next few nights, the messages continued. "Don't answer the door. Don't listen to him. He lies. And always, don't go in the basement." I didn't understand. There was no one here but me. No one to answer the door for, no one to lie. But the tension in the house grew. Lights flickered, the air grew colder. My phone stopped charging properly. My plants began to wilt, even with sunlight. And then the knock came. 3 sharp raps at the front door. It was 3:07 a.m. I stood frozen in the hallway. Again, 3 knocks. I tiptoed to the peephole. A man stood outside, backlit by the porch light, pale, smiling. He didn't knock again, just waited. My phone had no signal. The whisper came, "Don't answer." I backed away. Eventually the man left, but he returned the next night and the next. Always at 3:07, always knocking 3 times. I set up a camera, but every time I reviewed the footage, nothing. The porch remained empty. The whispering grew louder. "Stay upstairs, lock your door." And the most chilling, "He's in the basement." I didn't want to believe it, but part of me knew something was wrong with the house. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to check the basement, just to prove to myself it was empty. I brought a flashlight, a crowbar, and the blanket wrapped tightly around my shoulders. I opened the door slowly. The scent of rot hit me immediately, stronger than I remembered. The stairs groaned underfoot. Halfway down, I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, raspy, close. I shone the light around. Boxes, shelves, dust, then movement. In the far corner, a figure crouched there, barely visible, the man from the porch. He smiled. "You're not supposed to be here yet," he said. My voice caught. "Who are you?" He tilted his head. "I'm what comes after." I didn't understand. "She's cheating," he whispered. "She's keeping you longer." He stepped closer. She made a promise. She broke the rules. I clutched the blanket. "Get out." His smile faded. "This isn't over." He vanished. Not ran, not walked. Just vanished. The air snapped back to normal. The basement felt lighter. I ran upstairs, locked every door, wrapped myself in the blanket, and sobbed. The whisper came. "I'm sorry, I didn't want you to see him." "What is he?" I asked aloud. "A collector, a mistake. He comes for the lonely." "Why me?" "Because I left." I didn't sleep. The next morning, the basement was empty. But the whispering grew weaker, fainter. She was fading. I begged her to stay. Pleaded. She answered only once. "He'll come again," so I prepared. Salt lines, mirrors, old rituals I found in strange corners of the internet. Every night I lit a candle, wrapped myself in the blanket, waited. The knocks stopped. The dreams ended. The house quieted, and slowly her voice returned. Soft, steady. Not every night, but often enough. I don't know how long this balance will hold, how long I can keep him away. But for now I sleep, and every morning I whisper, "Thank you, Mom." And the blanket replies, "You're safe, sweetheart, you're safe." When I bought the old house, I didn't expect to inherit its ghosts. It was a 2-story craftsman-style place on the edge of town, built in 1912, with creaky floors, stained glass windows, and the kind of history that attracts either renovators or the overly romantic. I was the latter. After a messy breakup and years in sterile apartments, I wanted a place that felt real, even if that meant leaky plumbing and chipped paint. The previous owner, a quiet widow, had passed away the year before. Her children lived out of state and sold it as is. Most of the furniture was gone, but a few old items remained. Curtains, a rocking chair, a trunk in the attic. Things that didn't sell or didn't matter. It wasn't until my third week there that I found the letter. I was rearranging the shelves in the upstairs hallway, a built-in bookshelf with a hidden drawer beneath. The drawer stuck when I tried to open it, swollen with age. After some effort and a fair amount of dust inhalation, it gave way. Inside was a single envelope, faded cream paper, yellowed with time, the edges curled like it had been handled many times. The handwriting was elegant, looping, a woman's hand, probably. It read, "To James, my love, no return address, no stamp, just that line." I should have left it alone, but curiosity is a funny thing. I opened it. The letter inside was long, several pages. The ink had faded in places, but it was still legible. It spoke of love, deep, intense love. Descriptions of summer nights by the lake, whispered promises beneath an old willow tree, longing etched into every sentence. But there was also something else. A tension, warnings about someone watching them. A he mentioned in hushed, fearful tones. Then came the signature. "Forever yours, Nathan." I stared at the name. Nathan. My name. I thought it might be a coincidence, a relative, maybe. But as I read it again, something about the phrasing, the words, it felt familiar. Not in a "this reminds me of something" way, in a deeper, more unsettling way, as if I had written it, as if those words had come from me. I shook it off, put the letter back in the drawer, went downstairs and tried to focus on dinner. But that night, I dreamed of a woman's voice, soft, pleading. "James, he's coming. Please, hurry." I woke up in a cold sweat. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the letter. I tried to forget it, but every night I dreamed of her. The same voice, the same warning, and always, just before I woke, I saw a flash of her face, pale, wide-eyed, framed by dark hair. She looked terrified. I went back to the drawer, pulled the letter out again. This time something was different. A new page. Folded inside the old ones, same paper, same handwriting. But this letter was dated differently. September 3rd, 2023. That was 2 weeks ago. I reread it 3 times. It still ended with "Forever yours, Nathan," and it described things I couldn't have known. A storm that hit the area last week, a power outage that affected my block, a dog barking at 3 a.m. outside my window. Then, the last line. "They think I don't remember, but I do. We made a promise. We'll find each other again." I dropped the letter. Something was wrong. I don't sleep much these days. The dreams keep getting worse. She's always running, looking over her shoulder. Sometimes she calls my name, Nathan, like she's warning me, like she's trying to get me to run too. I started digging. Local archives, online forums, newspaper clippings from the 1950s. That's how I found James Whitaker. He lived in this house in 1956, a quiet man, war veteran, never married, died in his sleep at age 43. But there were rumors. A woman, a love affair, a disappearance. Her name was Evelyn Hart. I found a photo, blurry, black and white, but I recognized her. It was the woman from my dreams. The article said she vanished in October of 1956, last seen walking near the lake outside town. No body was ever found. The case was cold, forgotten, except she wasn't gone. She was here. That night I took the letter, lit a candle, and read it aloud in the hallway. When I finished, the room went still. The air thickened, and then I heard it. Footsteps. Upstairs. I stood frozen, every hair on my body standing on end. The footsteps moved slowly, deliberately. Toward the attic, I followed. The attic door groaned as I opened it. Dust billowed down. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding. The trunk sat in the corner. I hadn't touched it before. Now I approached. The lock was rusted, but broke easily under pressure. Inside, wrapped in yellowed cloth, were bundles of letters, dozens of them, all written to James. All signed by me, my handwriting, my phrasing. But I had never written them. My hands trembled as I unfolded one. He's watching us. I don't know who he is, but he knows. He knows everything. Suddenly, the attic light flickered, and in the far corner I saw her, Evelyn. Pale, shadowy, but there. She looked at me with eyes full of sorrow, then she mouthed a single word, "Help!" I stepped forward, but she vanished. The next day I went back to the archives. Found a journal entry, James's. One of the librarians had scanned it for a local history project. In it, James wrote about Evelyn, about how she claimed she and Nathan had been together before, that he didn't understand, but he loved her. Then the final entry. He followed her here. I see him now too. The man in the window, always watching. I think he wants her. I think he's not human. The man in the window. That night, I boarded up the windows. I read the letters again, looked for clues, dates, patterns. They always stopped in October, right before Evelyn vanished. Something was coming. Again. Last night I had the worst dream yet. Evelyn was trapped behind a mirror, screaming, her hands bloodied from pounding on the glass, and behind her, him, a man in a black coat, his face blank, eyes like ink. He turned and looked at me, and I woke up. The mirror in the hallway was cracked. I hadn't touched it. I decided to finish the letter, to reply. I wrote, Evelyn, I remember. I never forgot. I'm here. I'm coming. I signed it Forever Yours, Nathan, and placed it back in the drawer. Then I waited. At 3:13 a.m., the hallway light flickered, and she was there. Evelyn, clearer than before, solid. She whispered, he's almost here. But if we do it now, if you open the mirror, we can end it. I didn't understand. Open the mirror, she pointed, the hallway mirror. Cracked, reflecting the candlelight. I approached. Trembling, I reached out. The surface shimmered, cool, not solid, like water. I stepped back. Evelyn nodded. It's a door. He uses it, but you can close it from the other side. What happens if I go in? You won't be alone. That was all she said. Then the candle blew out, and I knew I had to decide. I lit another candle, took the final letter, held it tight, then I stepped through. The world shifted. Darkness. Whispers. A corridor of glass and shadow, and Evelyn beside me. Solid, holding my hand. He's here, she whispered. The man appeared, tall, featureless, moving like smoke. He reached for her. I stepped between them, held up the letter. This ends now, I said. The man froze, and then he screamed. Not a sound, but a feeling, a pressure. My ears bled. Evelyn cried out. I threw the letter into the mirror. The world shattered. I woke in my bed. Morning. Sunlight. Silence. The mirror was gone. In its place, the drawer sat open. Empty. The letter was gone. But I found something else. A photo. Me and Evelyn, smiling, on the porch dated 1956. I don't know what it means. Maybe another life, maybe something else. But I haven't dreamed since. And every night, as I turn off the lights, I whisper, Forever Yours. I moved into the apartment in early September, chasing a new job, a new city, a fresh start. It was a modest one-bedroom on the third floor of a tired brick building in the older part of town. Cheap, quiet, and conveniently near the bus line. Just what I needed. Unpacking was slow. Between my long hours and general lack of motivation, boxes sat unopened for days. I didn't have much. Some clothes, my laptop, kitchen essentials, and a single cardboard box marked childhood. I found the teddy bear on my 5th night there, nestled between a photo album and a copy of Goodnight Moon. I didn't even remember packing it. The bear was small, maybe 12 inches tall, with matted brown fur and one button eye. The stitching around its mouth was slightly crooked, giving it a perpetual half-smile. I used to call him Toby. Seeing him triggered a vague warmth, like hearing an old song you can't quite place. I almost tossed him back in the box, but something made me set him on the dresser instead. Maybe nostalgia, maybe loneliness. The first night Toby was out, I dreamed of my old bedroom. Pale blue walls, a nightlight in the corner, and the gentle hum of my parents watching TV downstairs. I woke up oddly rested, but the next morning Toby was on the floor, leaning against my bed. I chalked it up to gravity. The dresser wasn't perfectly level, and maybe vibrations from traffic or me tossing in bed had nudged him off. I placed him back and went to work. The following night, I dreamed again, only this time I wasn't a child. I was me, as I am now, sitting on the edge of my old twin-sized bed watching the closet door slowly creak open by itself. I didn't feel scared, just observed. Morning, Toby was on the bed, right next to my pillow. I stared at him for a good minute before touching him. He was cool to the touch, soft, silent. I started making mental excuses. I must have moved him in my sleep. Maybe I was half awake and did it without remembering. That made sense. I was tired, adjusting to a new schedule, dreams bleeding into waking life. Happens all the time. But something about his placement, perfectly upright, turned toward me, unnerved me. That night, I placed him in the closet. Not thrown or hidden, just neatly placed on the top shelf. I even said out loud, "Good night, Toby," trying to laugh off the irrational tension. In the morning, Toby was back, on the bed, exactly where he'd been the previous day. I stood frozen in the doorway for a full minute. I checked the closet. The shelf was bare. Then I checked my apartment. Windows locked, door bolted, nothing out of place. I live alone. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? My childhood bear is sneaking out at night? No. This was stress, sleepwalking, some weird psychological glitch. That had to be it. I locked him in the closet again that night. This time I placed a heavy box in front of the door, not to trap him, of course, but to verify, to reassure myself that it couldn't open easily. He returned. Now he sat not just on the bed, but on my chest of drawers, facing me. That morning I left for work and didn't come back until nearly midnight. I walked straight past him without looking. On Friday, I called my sister. We hadn't spoken in months. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Do you remember that bear I had? Toby?" She laughed. "Yeah, you used to drag that thing everywhere. You tried to bring it into the bathtub once. Did anything weird ever happen with it?" She paused. "Weird how? Like, did it ever move on its own? Or creep you out?" "Creep me out, but used to talk to it. A lot." I exhaled. "Right. You okay?" "Yeah, just tired." We talked for another 5 minutes before I hung up. That night, I didn't put Toby in the closet. I left him on the dresser just to see. No dreams. But he moved again, back to the bed. Saturday afternoon, I decided to test something. I bought a motion-activated camera, one of those basic models for pets or baby monitors. I placed it across from the dresser, aimed squarely at Toby. Set it to record overnight. In the morning, I checked the footage. Most of it was still grainy darkness, faint audio from the street outside. Around 3:13 a.m., the camera clicked on. Toby twitched. It was subtle, a minor shift. Then his head slowly turned toward the camera. The motion sensor picked it up. He moved again, sliding a few inches closer to the edge of the dresser. Then it cut out, a brief flicker. When the video resumed, Toby was gone. The bed was empty. And then I heard something that froze my blood. Breathing. Shallow. Rhythmic, coming from behind the camera. I yanked the plug out of the wall and didn't sleep that night. Sunday morning, I placed Toby back in the box he came from. I sealed it with packing tape and took it down to the building's trash room. I didn't throw him in the bin. I left him on the table for large item disposal. Someone else's problem. That night, I dreamed of the trash room, of standing in the doorway, the lights flickering, and the sound of scratching. Something inside one of the bins, thumping, trying to get out. I woke to a soft thud in the hallway. I got up. I opened the door to my bedroom slowly, holding my breath. The box sat at the foot of my bed. The tape was intact. I touched it, dry, unmoved, no markings, no dirt, as if it had never left. Inside, Toby stared up at me. I threw the box across the room and didn't bother to clean it up. That Monday, I called out sick. I spent the day researching everything I could about haunted objects, cursed toys, psychological delusions. Most of it was nonsense, forums full of LARPers and horror stories. But one post caught my eye. It was a woman in upstate New York writing about a porcelain doll that moved on its own. She called it residual energy, something left behind by a traumatic event. The advice was oddly specific. Don't destroy it, don't ignore it, don't lie to it. If it wants attention, she wrote, give it, but make rules. Be firm. Spirits respect boundaries. Rules. That night I sat Toby upright on my desk, lit a candle beside him, and I talked. "I don't know what you are," I began, my voice trembling, "or what you want, but I'm not afraid of you." He didn't move. "You can stay, but you can't come to the bed. Not anymore." I pointed to the shelf. "You sleep there. That's the rule." I felt ridiculous, but also oddly empowered. I didn't lock him up. I let him be. That night, I had no dreams. In the morning, Toby was still on the shelf. It worked. For a week, everything was normal. I went to work. Slept fine. Occasionally, I'd talk to him before bed. "Good night, Toby." Sometimes I'd get a whiff of nostalgia, like powdered sugar or warm cotton. I even started to feel okay, like he was watching over me, until last Thursday. I came home late from a company dinner. I was tipsy. Maybe more than tipsy. Forgot my routine, forgot the rules. Toby was on the bed again. But this time, his stitched mouth had split further. The thread had torn, exposing a second row of jagged black stitches underneath, like teeth. I stared at him, heart pounding. He wasn't just watching anymore, he was waiting. I tried to apologize. I didn't mean... I stopped myself. Don't lie. I forgot. I was drunk. I didn't mean to break the rule. The next morning, the mouth was back to normal. No tear. But the warning was clear, so I wrote the rule down, posted it on the wall. Rule: Toby stays on the shelf, no exceptions. It's been 4 days. He hasn't moved. Tonight, though, something changed. I came home to find Toby lying face down on the floor beneath the shelf. The candle I used to light was knocked over, wax spilled across the desk. My wall note was gone. Not fallen. Gone. I felt a new kind of dread. He wasn't angry. He was hurt. That night I lit the candle again. "I'm sorry," I said. "I made the rule too harsh. I didn't mean to punish you." I paused. "You can sit on the desk if you want, but please, don't come to the bed." He stayed on the desk. Since then, we've come to an understanding. I talk to him every night. I light the candle. I read old bedtime stories from my childhood. He seems calmer. Last night, I woke to the sound of crying. Not loud, soft, like a child stifling sobs. I turned on the light. Toby was still on the desk, but the room felt different. Lighter, somehow, like a window had been opened in a room sealed for too long. I don't know who or what Toby really is. A memory given form? A child's spirit seeking comfort? Some fragment of my own loneliness animated by grief? But I've stopped trying to get rid of him. Because since I started treating him with kindness, the nightmares have stopped. I sleep better. I feel less alone. Tonight I found a small paper heart next to him. Hand-cut like something from elementary school with the word "thank you" written in shaky crayon. I smiled. "Good night, Toby," I whispered, turning off the light. He didn't move. He didn't need to. That was the one rule the landlord gave me when I moved into Westridge Towers. Not a warning about noise complaints, late rent, or parking. Just that. "Never press 6, he said, handing me the keys. "Even if it lights up, even if someone else presses it, don't go there." I thought he was joking, or trying to scare the new tenant. But he didn't smile. His eyes didn't blink. "I'm serious," he added. "Treat it like it doesn't exist." The building was old but clean. 9 floors, retrofitted in the 80s with a creaky brass elevator and threadbare carpet. My apartment was on the 7th floor. Decent view, low rent, slightly haunted wallpaper. I took it. For the first few weeks, nothing seemed odd. I used the elevator every day. The buttons read B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. No 6. Just a thin strip of black plastic where it should have been. But sometimes, when I rode alone late at night, the plastic strip glowed faintly, dim, like an LED beneath it trying to pulse through. I tried pressing it once out of curiosity. It didn't do anything, just a soft buzz like a broken circuit. I asked a neighbor about it. Miss Chen from 5B, who walked her dog at odd hours and always smelled faintly of garlic and roses. "Don't ask about 6, she said flatly. "It's better not to know." She didn't elaborate. I became obsessed. I started watching the elevator from the lobby camera, which I accessed via the building's buggy security app. Once, at 2:17 a.m., I saw the elevator stop at floor 6. No one got on, no one got off. It stayed there for a full minute, then continued up to 9. I watched the footage 3 times. Floor 6 wasn't supposed to exist. One night, coming home late from a friend's birthday, the elevator stopped on 5. A man stepped in, tall, thin, face pale and slightly sunken, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He pressed no buttons, just stood beside me, breathing slow. Then the elevator buzzed. The floor indicator blinked. 6. The plastic strip glowed red. The man didn't react. I stepped back. When the doors opened, he walked out. The hallway beyond was wrong. Too dark, too long, lined with doors that didn't match any other floor. Blackened metal. No numbers. He turned and looked at me. "You coming?" he asked. I shook my head. The doors closed. The elevator resumed. I pressed 7 with a shaking hand and got off as soon as I could. I tried reporting it. The landlord didn't return my calls. The next day, the 6 strip was gone, just a blank metal panel. I checked the floor plans online. Westridge Towers skipped floor 6 officially. Superstition. Built during a time when developers thought skipping certain floors avoided bad luck. Same with 13, but old blueprints told a different story. Floor 6 was real. Originally designed as a storage level, converted to utility offices and maintenance. Then sealed. Why? No explanation. I asked Miss Chen again. She sighed. "You're not the first." "The first what?" "To see it." She looked down. "My husband pressed 6 years ago. He never came back." I stared. "Missing?" She nodded. "Elevator footage showed him stepping out. That's all." "What's on that floor?" "No one knows." I couldn't let it go. I planned it carefully. Midnight. On a Sunday, I wedged open the elevator doors on the ground floor using a mop handle. Disconnected the emergency override. Then slipped the handle in again on 5, just enough to trick the system. Then I pressed the black panel. It lit up. 6. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. The hallway beyond was darker than before. Long, silent, walls stained with water damage, lights flickering overhead. I stepped out. The air felt wrong, thick, electric. I walked forward. Doors lined the walls. None had numbers, some were cracked open. Inside, strange things. One room held filing cabinets, all labeled with names, mine included. Another held mirrors, tall, antique, all covered in dust, except the one in the center. That one showed me, but I didn't move. My reflection stayed still, then smiled. I ran. The hallway changed, doors vanished, the floor stretched, warped, like a maze rearranging itself. I turned a corner and found a stairwell. I took it, 2 steps at a time, upward. The door to 7 was locked, same with 8, same with 9. Only the basement door opened. I stepped through. Darkness swallowed me. Then voices, soft, echoing. I followed them. To a room. Inside, people. Sitting. Still. Their eyes open but vacant. One of them was the man from the elevator. Another, Ms. Chen's husband. I recognized him from the old photo in her living room. They stared ahead. In the center of the room, a mirror, the same one from before. It showed me again. This time I wasn't alone. Something stood behind me. I turned. Nothing. I looked back. My reflection was gone. Just the empty room. I backed out. Ran. The hallway warped again, but I found the elevator. It waited. Doors open. I stepped in. Pressed 1. The doors didn't close. I felt a presence behind me. I didn't turn. I whispered, "Please." The doors shut. The elevator hummed. When I stepped out into the lobby, it was morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows. I was shaking, sweating. I looked back. The panel for 6 was gone. I moved out that week. But sometimes in other buildings, I see elevators with missing floors. And I never pressed them. But I always wonder, what would have happened if I'd looked behind me? That's what was written on a yellowed index card, taped to the inside of the night shift logbook. I laughed when I first saw it. I had just started working security at the Ashcroft Municipal Archives, a job I took mostly because it was quiet, paid better than retail, and let me be alone. No customers, no stress. Just a big building full of papers, maps, microfilm, and climate-controlled shelves of forgotten government documents. Paul, the older guy training me, didn't laugh. "You follow that rule," he said, tapping the card with one weathered finger. "Always. Never skip it, even if you're late." "What's the gatekeeper?" I asked. He gave me a look. "Don't ask questions you don't want real answers to." I thought he was just trying to freak me out. The place was eerie, sure. Built in the 1950s, with long hallways that hummed under fluorescent lights and stairs that echoed like cathedral crypts. At night, it felt like a mausoleum. No windows, no movement. Just the sound of your own breath and the distant hiss of vents. Still, it didn't bother me. Not at first. I worked 11:45 p.m. to 7:15 a.m., 5 nights a week. My job was simple. Log the time, check each floor once per hour, and note any anomalies. There were 5 floors above ground, 2 below, and security cameras in every hallway except the bathrooms and break rooms. The only camera that didn't record was the one in the front lobby. "Live feed only," Paul explained. "Out of respect." Respect for what? He just looked at me and said, "Say hello, every night, when you come in." So I did. I felt dumb the first time, walking in through the main doors at 11:52 p.m. with my flashlight in one hand and backpack in the other, and saying, "Good evening, gatekeeper," to an empty room. No one responded, of course, but the moment I said it, the air felt easier. Like something invisible had let out a breath it was holding. I didn't think much of it. Just part of the weirdness of working nights. The first week passed uneventfully. Then, on the 6th night, I was late. Just 10 minutes. There'd been a car accident on 8th Street, and I'd sat in my idling Corolla, watching the clock tick past 11:59. I ran inside at 12:06, keys jangling, bag bouncing against my hip. I dumped my stuff at the desk and rushed to the atrium. "Good evening, gatekeeper," I said. The lights above me buzzed once, then flickered. Not a full outage, just a stutter, but enough to make me stop mid-step. I shook it off. Fluorescence. But the feeling didn't go away. The building felt unsettled. Every step echoed too loud. The stairwell creaked under my boots. When I turned corners, I half expected someone to be standing there. And once, I could swear I saw movement on the security monitor. Just a blur, near the second floor reading room. I walked the whole floor twice. No one was there, but the lights in that hallway wouldn't stop buzzing. I greeted the gatekeeper twice that night. Felt like an apology. The next morning, Paul called me. "Were you late?" I hesitated. "A little." "Don't do that again," he said. I started taking it seriously after that. Every night, as soon as I walked in, "Good evening, gatekeeper." Sometimes I'd do it twice, just to be safe. There were strange things now and then. Books left open in the reading room when I knew I hadn't touched them. Folders stacked differently than before. Once, the elevator doors opened on their own on the basement level when I hadn't called it. The air down there was ice cold. I started bringing a small offering, a hard candy, a flower, once even a small stone from a park I liked. I'd place it on the welcome desk in the lobby. I never saw them go, but they were always gone by the end of the night. Then came Marcus. He was hired to cover weekends after Paul finally retired. I tried warning him, "Always say good evening when you enter," I told him. "Even if you're tired, even if it's late, even if the building is empty, especially if it feels empty." He laughed. "Sure, man. I'll bow to the ghost at the front desk." "It's not a ghost," I said. "It's a keeper." He rolled his eyes. I worked Friday. He took Saturday and Sunday. Monday morning, I got a call from our supervisor. Marcus hadn't clocked out. I drove in. The lights were on. The cameras showed nothing unusual until I checked the live feed from the front lobby. There, at the edge of the screen, was Marcus's bag. Unzipped, still full. His shoes were beside it, perfectly placed, as if he'd stepped out of them and walked away. But he hadn't walked anywhere. Not on the cameras, not outside, not to the restroom. He was just gone. I walked through every floor and I greeted the gatekeeper, softly, pleadingly. "I'm sorry he didn't understand," I whispered. The air shivered, and then it was still. I don't know what happened to Marcus. They said he ran off, that maybe he quit without telling anyone. But I know the truth. He broke the rule. Since then, I've been the only one willing to work nights. No one else lasts. They hear the whispers, see shadows in the hallways, feel the cold rise from the basement like breath from a sleeping beast. But I greet the gatekeeper, every time, and I stay safe. Last month, they offered me a raise to work full-time overnights. I took it. I don't mind being alone. In fact, I'm not even sure I am alone. Sometimes when I whisper, "Good evening," I hear something back. A breath, a whisper, a soft sound like wind passing through keys, and it says, "Good evening." I moved into the old row house in early October, just as the nights lengthened and the city started to smell of damp leaves and wood smoke. It had stood empty for 3 years, part of an estate left to settle after the owner's death. The peeling paint and warped porch spoke of neglect, but inside it offered something simpler, a clean break. I needed that when I left everything behind. I didn't plan it at first. The decision came quietly, late one night as I scrolled through listings. I was tired of my cramped apartment, tired of the sterile glow of overhead lights. This place had character, a sense of history. It felt like a place I could breathe again. The landlord handed over keys with minimal ceremony. "We've never had any issues," she said, eyes darting around like she was checking for ghosts. "Except a mirror. There's one upstairs, by the bathroom door. People sometimes say they hear crying before they see something in it. Just don't look when that happens." She met my gaze and laughed it off, light and nervous like a reflex. But the warning hung in the air. I unpacked over the weekend. The floors creaked with every step. The walls smelled of paint and pine cleaner. I put things away, made notes about drywall that needed patching, cabinets that sagged. I looked upstairs for that mirror. Saw the usual bathroom mirror, small, veneered frame. No other reflective glass. Either it was gone, or I just didn't notice. Either way, I didn't dwell on it. I wanted new routines, new patterns. The first night, I slept like a stone. Exhaustion overcame the echoes. I woke at dawn and fixed old floors with leftover stain. It was on Wednesday, the 4th night, that everything began. I worked from home, early morning slots editing a colleague's thesis, then meetings and notifications until dusk. By 10, I was exhausted. I liked waking late, staying up late. The house felt alive at night, wind rattling windows, a distant train hum, neighbors muffled behind walls. At about 1:15 a.m., I woke to a sound. I mistook it for the fridge buzzing, or perhaps the street. It stopped my breathing. A faint cry, so soft I thought maybe I'd imagined it. It sounded like a child crying. No rhythm, no words, just piercing, fragile sobs drifting through the hall. I froze in bed. My heart did that leap and catch. I strained to listen. The cry faded quickly, like a candle blown out, just gone. My first thought, neighborhood dog locked outside. Or a baby? I tossed aside blankets and padded toward the hall. Lights were off. I flicked one in the hallway. Silence. Just the stillness of midnight in an old house. I marched downstairs, checked corners, even peeked onto the porch. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing. I checked my phone. 1:17 a.m. No weather alerts, no messages. I shook my head and climbed back into bed, replaying the scream in my head until I fell back asleep. Daylight felt odd. The sky was pale. My head throbbed around my temples. Tension or lack of sleep, I wasn't sure. At work, I waited for updates, tried not to drift off. By evening, I decided I'd chalk it up to stress. Maybe the house was just creaking in ways that reminded me of childhood. Many old houses did. I'd fix the floors, that would help. Patch the wallpaper, make everything feel smooth again. Back at home around 10:30, I poured tea and watched the house settle around me. Pipes bubbled, tree branches tapped glass. Something about that darkness was comforting. On my 5th night, the cry came again. I was reading upstairs, trying to finish one chapter. I planned to go to bed by midnight, but words slipped, urging me on. The crying started around 12:54 a.m., this time closer. It sounded right outside the bedroom door, soft hugs of despair. I jumped to my feet, pounding into the hall with a lamp in hand. I flicked on the hall light. Nothing. No shapes, no sounds. I checked every closed door, including the bathroom. Then I saw it. The mirror I hadn't noticed. It was mounted on a small wall panel between the bathroom and stairs. The oval glass edged in tarnished brass, about waist high. I hadn't paid it much mind before, small, unassuming. Now, I noticed it. My reflection stared back, pale in lamplight, eyes wide. There was no crying, just silence. I read the first rule taped beneath it: never look after hearing crying. I stared. Heart pounding, I hesitated. The cry had stopped. Hadn't I checked already? But the rule felt carved into my skull. I shut the lamp off. No turning back. I slept fitfully. The next morning, I found the mirror cleaner droplet of something on the floor beneath it. Faint, sticky. I thought at first it was melted gum or electrophoresis residue. I cleaned it, no thought of markers or graffiti. That night, I made sure to turn off my book by 11. Family stream at 10. Familial comfort. Bed by midnight. At 12:42 a.m., I woke to the cry again. Only now it echoed from the hallway bathroom. So close. I sat up, flicked on the light at the far end. I dared not look into that mirror after hearing the rule, but I needed to know what the sound was. The crying surged. It didn't sound like a child now, more like animal keening. Heart-wrenching. Oppressive. I backed away from the bedroom door, footsteps toward me, then the sobbing, then tap, tap. Something hit the bathroom door. My first real thought, break the mirror, end it. But I'd have to look into it. I remembered other horror stories. Cross the threshold and you release whatever it is. So I stepped backward, doors closed, footsteps down, retraced, crashing past living room, hit the porch. Balcony felt safe, even in the cold. Silvery breath, clear sky. I scrambled down the stairs outside, pulled them closed behind me. I looked up. Nothing. Just the house looming in shadows. Heart thundering. I eyed the front door. Back inside. Try again? Or sleep at a motel? I decided on breathing. Took 5 deep ones. Pushed open the door, ascended quietly. Bedroom was dark. I slid under the covers, blanket over my ears. The sobbing stopped. I never looked in the mirror. In the morning, I examined the hallway. Nothing. No marks. A faint residual damp near the mirror's base. But no puddles, no footprints. Even the carpet was clean. I posted a cheap stick-on LED lamp next to the mirror. Soft night glow. I'd leave it lit to ward off whatever happened. Tuesday after work, I called a mirror glazer. I wanted it replaced. He came yesterday and said it was old but repairable. I'd do it tomorrow. 3 hours, hinge removed, swapped in a new pane. I packed a bag for work, laptop, coat, extra coffee. I'd load it all and drive to the glazer after my shift. Last night was calm. I worked until midnight, kissed goodnight to Auntie's new puppy over video chat, and headed up. I passed that mirror with dread, phone cradled in front. The LED glowed. I didn't stop. Locked the door behind me and went to bed. I slept deeply until morning. When I awoke, I frowned at the mirror. The LED was off. I remembered I unplugged it. I flipped it back on. Then I saw writing, something etched with fingernails into the tarnished frame. I kneeled. Thank you for not looking. If there was any prize beyond that, or some small comfort, it was relief. I realized I never heard crying last night or earlier this week. Maybe the act of not looking broke the pattern. I called the glazer and said to delay. I'm thinking now I might not replace it at all. Even though the rule is creepy, I'd rather leave it be. Better it stays, and stays quiet. I wrote it down in a small log, date, time, no crying, no looking. 4 nights now, still safe. I also reached out to prior tenants. One lived here for 6 months, then moved out suddenly after 3 nights. Another for just 1 month. They made a bigger fuss, but again only cried. They said all the same. Crying, mirror, didn't look. I began to sense a pattern. Breaking the rule, looking, seems to start the cycle. But silence sustains it. Maybe it's not fear, but choice. By not looking, I choose to cancel whatever waits on the other side. Tonight, I plan to leave a small offering next to it. A vase of fresh flowers wrapped in cloth from my grandmother. Something bright. A gesture, in case it matters. I will greet it, maybe whisper reassurance, then I'll close the door, then I will sleep. So here is my current rule. Never look into that mirror after hearing crying. And now I believe it's enough. Not because I fear what's there, but because I care about what is. To keep my boundaries, to preserve silence. And because perhaps the quiet is a fragile thing we are still unraveling. So if you ever hear crying in that old row house, any old house, please don't look into that mirror. Please don't. And maybe you'll wake up safe and right back to tell me you are.